So this is going to be kind of a collection of things, and I'm going to try to fit it into 20 minutes and leave 10 for questions. So I'll probably be moving at a good clip. but So I'm going to try to cover a lot of things. I also thought there's going to be some things in here that people will disagree with, and I sort of thought for a keynote, maybe getting people talking and throw some things out there that people would respond to one way or the other might be fun and wake us up. So that's in here somewhere. So I'm going to cover some U.S. statistics, talk about the current motorcycle work that we're doing and other people are doing in the U.S., talk about naturalistic, and also give some summary thoughts, which is where I get into kind of my view. So just to compare, we're very similar to the EU from what I hear in terms of overall number of fatalities. I heard the number 17% yesterday, and I put some numbers in here. These slides you all have access to, but generally the numbers compare. Here's a trend. So since the furthest left on the graph is 1975, so we had a dip in the mid 90s and then came up since then. So far I've been showing numbers. If you look at the rates, whether you look at the rates per distance traveled or per vehicle, the rates have gone down, but the overall numbers have gone up. One thing I want to, as I go through the data in the States, and I'm curious whether this would be true here, the number of fatalities on motorcycles and cars become difficult to compare. And I have an example here. If we talk, and we were talking yesterday, 35% of motorcycle fatalities are speed related and 22% for cars. But can you really compare those with the differences between those? So I'm not going to have too many answers here, but just throwing out some questions. So when I look at that, I start then wanting to pick it apart further. So for fatal crashes, we have real good numbers. For injurious crashes, we have okay numbers. In the States, for motorcycle crashes, we essentially don't have numbers on property damage. Unless it's an insurance company or some type of collection like that, we don't have good numbers on the number of damaged bikes, and you see that in the stats. It just falls off to nothing in that category. What this starts to tell me is that, and I sort of brought this up, and other people yesterday did also, motorcycle crashes look different than car crashes. And I think it's more difficult to get understanding in a post-crash investigation out of a motorcycle crash than a car, for many reasons. Some of it is the police and their training. Some of it is the forms that are developed for cars. So there's a lot of things going on there. And then there's just the mechanism of the crash probably leaves fewer marks, things like that. So sticking still with some of these percentages, we talked yesterday, and often, we look for, maybe it's some element of the ride or maybe it's some element of the road. And when I go through the stats, I'm thinking, what are the big numbers? And this kind of difference here between cars and motorcycles is pretty dramatic. And so if you look at the most harmful event, the first two categories with a fixed object and a non-fixed object, cars and motorcycles, no real difference there. But what is going on with 82% versus 43%? And what's going on with 1% non-collision versus 38% collision? So there has to be something there. It's either in the reporting or it's in the crash mode. There's something there to be learned from. It kind of continues if we look at the first point of impact. And I don't know that you guys in the different countries may have better reporting than we have, very, very possible better reporting than we have in the States. But if we look at the first point of impact, similarly, left and right side, cars, motorcycles, no big difference there. But 62% versus 24%, again, there's got to be something there. I don't have the answer right here. 3% versus 60%. there's something to be learned from there in single vehicle crashes. Similarly, multiple vehicle crashes, they're comparable until you look at rear, and it looks like motorcycles end up in that rear end. So this is the motorcycle being struck from behind less frequently than cars by about half. So that's kind of an intro to some numbers from the states and some things that I think may have some information in them. Now looking at the current work, so actually for the last couple weeks I've been traveling. I met with NTSB and I've been out in California with MSF, and in January at TRB I was in the subcommittee meeting, so I kind of used those materials and that time with some different groups to collect some information for this. So these are the players in the states. NHTSA is of course big, and you'll probably have heard of them. Federal Highway, so NHTSA focuses on the driver and the vehicle. Federal Highway focuses on the road and the infrastructure. Those are federal. And Motorcycle Safety Foundation, which funded the big naturalistic study I'm going to tell you about, that's a private group that's funded by 13, I think it is, motorcycle manufacturers. And then IAHS Insurance Institute, similar to what Matthias, I think where Matthias works, is an insurance company that's doing good work in motorcycles. TRB, y'all are probably familiar with. They more guide research direction. I've left blank here so that some of the large players and their emphasis is riders, and I'm going to ask a question of you guys in a few minutes as I was thinking of what I would put in the rider focus area. So what would the riders focus on crash causation, I think is an interesting question. And then I'm from Virginia Tech, and we try to focus on the overall system, both the roadway, riders, the vehicle, the overall environment. And our funding is both public and private funding.